everybody. How's it going? Welcome to Sleep. Ha! Full time in tabletop. So we have a great panel today with some amazing guests, and I'm really excited to get into the meat and talk to them about what it is like to work full time in this crazy world and industry. But before we begin, my name is James Introcaso. I go by he, him, and I work full time in tabletop. I'm a game designer and I am a podcaster and a blogger. And let's go around the table. Leona, let's start with you.
Hi, my name is Leona. You can find me on Twitter at Leona Maple. I am a sensitivity reader, a cultural consultant. I run Maple Intersectionality Consulting, so I can help you with any of your diversity, equity, and inclusion questions. And that's what I kind of jumped into head first. So that's me.
Yes, excellent. Leona does a great job with that as well. So we've worked together. It's awesome. And then moving around the table here, Brendon, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Brendon Dixon. I make Swordsfall, a Afropunk sci-fantasy world, as I call it now, or universe. You can ignore the lightning. That's actually my mic flipping in and out, so you can enjoy that distraction. That's my intro. I feel like that's my main thing. Look up Swordsfall.
Yeah, absolutely. Which Swordsfall, I always love introducing people to it because it is so much more than just a world to play RPGs in. It's like a clothing line, and you put a music album out. The comic book just launched this week. It's amazing. You do incredible work.
Graphic novel in the works. We're doing everything.
Yeah, awesome. And moving over to Hannah. Hannah, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I am Hannah Rose, she, her. I do writing, editing, and various game design type things for Dungeons & Dragons, and along with the wonderful Celeste Conowitch and Lisa Penrose, I co-host a monthly tea time talk show called D&D Community. So you can catch us over on the D&D Twitch channel, second Friday of the month, drinking delicious tea and talking about all the stuff going on with friends and D&D family.
Awesome. That's really, really cool. So it is great to have you, Hannah, because I know you are very steeped in the tabletop world all day, every day, 24/7, maybe. And finally, Gabe, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Gabe. I, he, him. I do game design. I use digital and traditional game design. So I take a lot of my tabletop stuff and put it into my digital game design, which we'll probably go into a little bit with all this interesting panel. I also do some promotional work, which is actually why I've started doing like the cosplay stuff. And I've been like finding other games where people just have characters that they haven't projected yet. And one of the most fun ways to do it is when you can see a character come to life in costume as a real person, as someone enacting it. So that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's very cool that you do that, and we have like a great mix of people who all do different things here on this panel. And one of the things that is really exciting about tabletop role-playing games, right, is we're seeing a boom right now. We're seeing more and more people get into it, and I think as people discover it, usually because when you're a game master, you end up putting a lot of work into your games. A lot of people at least get the thought of like, oh, maybe I could, enter this industry, right, in some way. This is a fun thing. I get a lot of enjoyment out of it. So I want to kind of go around the table and get everybody's, the short version of your story so that people know, how did you make the leap from person who was interested in this hobby to person who was getting paid to do this thing? Were there steps in between? Like for me, I know that it started as a hobby, and then I got more and more into it, and then I started part-time, and then I eventually sort of made the leap full-time, right? But I know everybody else's story might be different. And I do also want to let the chat know, if you have questions for the panel, feel free to type them in the chat with the word question in all capital letters beforehand. I'll be watching the chat, and I will record them, and we'll ask those at the end, as many as we can. So But with that in mind, how did you make the leap? Leona, let's start with you on this one.
So mine was kind of an interesting trajectory. Basically, I started culture consulting and sensitivity reading because I just got tired of shit. I was a hobbyist, and this was a fun thing that I did, and I was like, come on, people, I'm sitting right here, like, come on, like, how I can help. And so, realizing that I could actually help and make a difference, I decided to start cultural consulting and sensitivity reading. And then, for a variety of reasons, had to step away from my day job, and therefore needed a full-time job. And so my side hustle became my main hustle.
Yeah, that is very similar, right, to what happened with me. It was like, oh, all this other work that I did is stopping for one reason or another, so now I'm doing this. So yeah, that's great. Brendon, how did you make the leap full time?
I kind of designed it that way from the beginning, honestly. Like I knew I didn't want to do what I was doing for a living, and I wanted to work for myself, so I kind of went in with the plan. It went better than I thought it was going to. So I was like, oh, hey, like I can do this like a year before I thought I'd have to, So it was a plan.
Yeah, that's great.
So organized.
Yeah. Well, and it
was more like motivated, like
yeah, no.
Because like I talked about this on my stream yesterday, but like this isn't like a hole in one for me. Like this is like the 8th, 9th business venture I've ever like tried in my life. So like, I failed a lot before. So it gets easier to do better when you failed before and you just go, cool, how do I not fail? So
yeah, I think learning through failure is a big thing. The number of times I have had pitches rejected, right, is far greater than the number of times I've had them accepted. And I think that's a big lesson to learn, that like failure is okay as long as you get up and you keep coming back at it. Or if you decide to walk away, that's fine too. Walk away with your head high.
Well, it's like Mythbusters say, failure is always an option.
Yes, exactly. Hannah, how did you make the leap?
So my partner, James Hicks, has been doing tabletop game design work full-time since he was in college. And I, saw him doing it all the time, and I was working in the tech industry. And I hadn't really thought that, well, like many things, I don't really originally thought this was something I could do or I could break into or I would be good at. And at a certain point, after I got on Twitter and started meeting wonderful people in the community and talking to people like James and Lisa, I was like, oh, well, I'll write a subclass for fun for one of my friends. And that turned out to be the College of the Opera that I made for the opera geek Kelly Butler. And she was like, you have to put this on DM's Guild. Because I was just planning to, format it up for practice and post it on Twitter. And she's like, no, you have to put this on DM's Guild. And then 500 people bought it in the first week. And I was like, oh, I guess I can do this thing. And I ended up thinking about D&D and design and gaming more and more and more while at my day job, and being less and less happy with my day job. And with my partner getting full-time at D&D Beyond, we kind of swapped which of us had salary and benefits, and I was able to go freelance. So I've been doing it for a little over a year now.
That's awesome. That's really great. On my own freelance journey and full-time journey, I do want to shout out also that Hake is the first person who ever gave me accepted a pitch from me. So there is that. But yeah, that is a great story, and I think sometimes, right, people make a go of it and good things happen, right, and you realize that your work is appreciated. And Hannah, you do great work. We've worked together a lot, so
I love working with you.
I love working with you. So Gabe, take us on the Gabe journey. How did it happen?
It was kind of accidental and unexpected. It really started working when I stopped trying to make things just for other people and started to make the things that I wanted to see. And then it was so strange to me because I was like, this idea is weird, but it's funny. Ha ha ha. And then I put it up and I'll go to sleep and then I'll have like 30 messages about it. And I'm like, I thought that I was the only one who cared about it. And then when I started to seeing when I could make things that I was passionate about, and people were interested in the things that I was passionate about because they shared that interest, it was like, oh, it isn't just that people want to see these things. People want to buy these things. People want to buy these things and help me afford to make more of these things and make better things. And then it was seeing it consistently flow. And as more people saw what I was doing or shared things that I was doing that they liked, more people became interested, more people saw the work. So it was like the snowball effect of like, if I'm enjoying it and passionate about it and I keep at it, there's going to be that group of people who share that interest. And those are the people who will share my work. Those are the people who will talk about my work. And it started coming together.
Having people who are interested in your work and like your work enough to spend their real human money on it is such a, I never get tired of that, both for like personal and practical reasons, but it feels really good. It's really important on several levels.
Yeah. And the whole point of getting into an industry like this is to have fun and do the things that you want to do. Right. And I think that then saying, I'm not going to chase what other people want. I'm going to make the things that I want to see in the world because I want to see them is really huge. And you do get good reactions because you also work harder on that stuff, right? You're like, I'm going to give this the extra proofread. I'm going to go the extra mile to promote this because I believe in it and I care about it, which I think is huge.
James, you know, I'm the one giving this the extra proofread.
That's right. Yeah, you'll spend good money on an editor if you believe in a project. And that sort of brings me to, all of us are full time, but we also all work for ourselves, right? We're either managing like a company we created, or we're managing our own finances, invoices. You've got to market yourself. So there's all of these different aspects of it that suddenly you're running a business, right? And Brendon, I would love to start with you for this one because you have said you've tried to start some business ventures, and Swords Fall is a big success for you. I think it's great. Like, how do you even begin to dive in and learn the things that aren't like making the product you want to make?
One of the things I usually tell, because I get this question, like a lot of people will DM me and be like, man, how'd you do it? And I think it's something they don't like to hear, but I tell them like it starts at wherever you're working, right? There's things that I know how to do in my business because I learned it on jobs I was at, either because I was taught it or it was something that I thought the company needed, the business needed, and it wasn't a thing. So I kept all those things in mind. So, and the thing is, it's also a mindset. I typically tend to be the kind of person, like, I have no problem complaining about something, but my end goal is to be like, yeah, but how would I do it then? I always try to be like, well, if I ran a company, I would do X, Y. And then I find myself in this position and it's like, so did you mean that stuff or were you just talking, so it's a little bit of a challenge to myself. So it's like when you're the boss and you've had other bosses, do you want to be that nightmare boss or do you want to be that awesome boss? So I kind of try to keep that in mind, but then you also have to manage like the realistic parts where like I treat myself like an employee because I have to pay rent, right? So it's like I keep both those in mind. I'm like, how can I be the awesome boss but also my own employee because I have to eat? And balancing those things is something that like you do all the time, but it helps when you have a jump start from other places that are technically successful. Like if you took a paycheck from them, they got somewhere far enough to pay you. So how did they do that? And like I've worked for a lot of businesses who have also closed. So I've also been there at mom and pops that have closed. So I've seen the things that have led to, a store closing. So I keep that in mind as well, so it's a lot of like lessons, every time I get to a juncture and I'm like, cool, I want to do this thing. I kind of like go through my mind and I'm like, have you seen this before at other jobs? It's like, yes or no. And it's like, how did that work out? And I, try to go from there. So sometimes it feels like I know what I'm doing, but really it's because like I steal knowledge from jobs I was at, even jobs I don't like that was a big thing. If I don't like a job, I'm like, cool, what can I learn here before I peace out, and
that's smart.
And also it's like, I think it's me, I'm a little bit not counterculture, but I feel like if we're in a capitalist society where it feels like you're being used, I don't like it being a one-way equation. Like if I know you're underpaying me, cool. I'm going to take every little possible thing I can from this business. Give me every manual, everything. I'm going to take everything I can to make up for that lack of money. So like I've been in those middle management jobs where like you're getting paid nothing and you work 60 hours and I'm like, this is terrible. And I try to be like, cool. So how do I get all this stuff? Because one day this is not going to be me. So then one day it is that one day, and you just try to keep that stuff in mind. You're like, cool, go time,
That's great. That's great. Yeah. Learning from the jobs you're on, even if they're crappy jobs is really important. And also I love that idea of like taking knowledge as payment, right? Of like, okay, listen, you're underpaying me, so I'm going to take what I can as far as manuals and I'm going to learn from your mistakes is a great way to do it. Gabe, you've got like a zillion different income streams, right? So how did you learn to manage all of the different things that you're doing and bring them together kind of in one Gabe James Games brand?
One of the biggest things that was such a simple fix is I used to do a lot of my scheduling digitally, and I learned for me personally, it doesn't work because I am not constantly seeing it. I got myself a huge physical calendar, slammed it on my wall. So literally when I wake up, I see it. And I'm like, there's 3 things on that calendar. I can't see it because my glasses are on, but I know I have 3 things to do this day. And then I start my day off with that. If I see like an alarm on my phone, I turn it off. But if I have a space where I'm working or such, and like the calendar is literally like, I look to the right and see it, then I'm like, okay, you know what? I should get those done because then I know how to gauge after that. And I don't even do the same thing every day. I might be like, this is one day where I just crank out 3 hours for this project. And then because I've planned and scheduled, I know that I have time to work on it next week, and that's okay. If I get the surge and motivation to do it outside of those 3 hours, awesome. But I'm blocking this time to do it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be everything I want it to be, but I can always build off a foundation if I start it. And that was how I managed running a Patreon about like personal growth, while also running a separate Patreon that's about my game design stuff. I have a secret, not so secret blog that's the only place that's really started my social media stuff. And that was what led me to doing voice acting. And voice acting led me to practicing sound design. And so like maybe like one day a week, I'll delve into one of those different things so that I'm also not like, okay, I'm going to edit for this hour and then I'm going to write for this hour. Because whenever I try to switch, my brain doesn't switch in a way that is optimally performing. If I'm like, you know what, today's a sound day, then like when I walk my dog, I'm like listening to the birds or like how wind actually sounds when it's breezing through trees. Or if I'm like planning to write in a day, I'm like, okay, you know what, this is a really terrifying or beautiful scene. And then I'm thinking about it because I start my day off knowing what I want to do in the future.
Yeah, that's a great thing, right? Having a schedule that works for you and planning ahead is really important when you have all of these different things to do. Hannah, you and I have often talked about all of the like business management end of things and invoicing people and trying to get to be paid on time, which is just like a small fraction of all of the things you have to do for yourself as a freelancer. What's your sort of system for managing and making sure everything gets done and you're taken care of?
Yes, my system that I definitely have. Honestly, my system is that I usually do most of the admin work first because that's easier for me to focus on all of those discrete tasks. And I, answer urgent emails and almost always send invoices as soon as I can because on a lot of projects, it can take me a month and a half to get paid, which is great. Most of the individual folks I work with pay me really fast, so that's great. But companies take a long time. So yeah, I usually handle the admin stuff first, and that kind of gets me into the work mindset, hopefully. And I do have a kind of week by week calendar of projects I plan to work on or need to work on that week, and that helps me look mostly it's not like, okay, this is what I'm going to do today, but it's like, this is what I'm going to be doing in a month. If somebody contacts me about work in the future, this is where my schedule will be at, theoretically.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and in terms of keeping track of that admin work, it's mostly just keeping my inbox clean.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I panic if my email ever gets to that second page where it's like you have to click next to see it. I'm like, this is bad. This is bad.
Say emails in singular. Ha. Ha.
So how about you, Leona? What do you do to sort of manage, especially because you sort of found yourself like suddenly like, oh, this side hustle is now my full-time thing. Like, how did you ramp up all of that to be ready to do it?
Yeah, and it's my first ever business adventure, honestly. So it's been a huge learning process. I was blessed with finding a lovely person who was like, you're doing your first thing. Like, let me help you. Let me give you some advice. So I was like, okay, great. And I tried to take all of her advice. And she taught me about things like making letters of agreement and things like that. So really, I'm still trying to build up my self-discipline, really, to be able to make sure that I'm like on track with things. Because I think that's the most important part about
Let me know when you figure that out.
Yeah, right. So that's definitely something that I'm still working on, like getting to grips with. But my Google Calendar is my best friend, and I do my best to stay on top of my emails as much as possible. So it's a process that I'm still feeling out for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm gonna break into one of the questions here because it's actually similar to one of the questions I was going to ask. So Drop the Die wants to know if you could tell yourself a year ago one piece of advice for freelancing, what would it be? And Hannah, why don't we start with you? Because you've been freelance over a year now, but
yeah, it's easy to look back to.
Yeah,
about a year ago.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think the biggest thing for me that sometimes I have to keep relearning and reminding myself of, because it's very easy to be introverted when you're working for yourself and self-employed, is that co-working is super important. Lately for me, a lot of that's been digital co-working with friends who aren't even in the industry, like with a friend in grad school, but having somebody else there and blocking that time out with somebody else holds you accountable and puts you in the mental space of, this is work time, this is time for working. And being able to, turn and chat with somebody else, or just have somebody else in a physical or digital space, helps kind of fulfill that part of my brain that would otherwise, go check Twitter every 5 minutes. So instead, I only check Twitter every half hour, which is a big improvement.
Yes. Yeah. I saw your tweet today about closing Twitter and then immediately reopening it. I was like, oh, this is so relatable. I feel called out.
Yeah. It's a self call out on that one. But yeah, finding people to co-work with, and in, other times going out to coffee shops and cafes and tea places is fantastic. And getting out of the house was a big deal for me. So I've had to adjust that recently, but even having digital co-working, voice call, video call, being on Discord really, really helps.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't miss having to commute. I don't miss having to work in an office with a bunch of people, feeling like someone's looking over my shoulder all the time. But having that energy of another person is incredibly helpful.
Awesome. Yeah, Leona, what about you? What do you wish you had known a year ago?
Oh boy, I wish I had known that I was starting a business. Honest to goodness, I had no idea that I was going to be doing this. And my whole family was just kind of like, okay, you do you. And they just kind of let me go at it. But I've learned that, especially like because we're all indoors so much now, taking a break is just as important as sitting down and getting the work done. And I think that's the one thing that I try to remind myself of, is like, get out of the house, because I'm at home all the time now, right? So getting out of the house, I think, is the lesson that I've learned from this, is having that space away from work is just as important. So I'll like even just go for a quick drive or something, but just getting outside and being able to take a break from things, I think just helps focus me more when I'm back at work. So that's something that I've learned.
Do you have anything that you use to kind of motivate yourself or trick yourself into actually standing up and getting outside or moving around?
Admittedly, no, but sunshine is a big motivator. If it's sunny outside, I will literally pick up my laptop and go and sit outside so that at least I'm breathing in fresh air and I'm soaking up some sunshine. Otherwise, I just look at the calendar, and if I'm like, it's been a week since you've stepped outside, Leona, I'm like, okay, we're fixing that. We're making, I don't care what kind of idea, what kind of plan, but we are getting out of this house. Like, whatever excuse you can come up with, just go. And I try to at least do it that way.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And I think work-life balance is really important. Especially.
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard when you enjoy what you do, and it's hard when it's in literally 2 feet away from your bedroom sometimes, right? Your work is right there. So
my partner
or in
has
your
his
bedroom.
desk in the bedroom. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's rough. It's rough. And you do need to get away. And in these times of pandemic, it can be even more stressful because you don't have as many places to go, and you want to be safe when you go somewhere. Gabe, what about you? What's one piece of advice that you wish you had a year ago?
Whenever I was trying to come up with things I wanted to do or be creative, I tried to do a lot of it in my head or myself, either because of self-confidence that was lacking or just not sure of interest. So I wish I had told myself working with people and making even a bit less than you intended to is way better than trying to do it all yourself and then never getting it done. There are dozens of times that I had ideas and I tried to do it all myself and I burnt myself out and it never happened. But if I'm like, hey, I have this idea, I don't think I can do all of it. Do you want to work together? And then we both make money. And when someone's like, yeah, I'm like, oh my God, I just did half of the work I wasn't planning to do. And then I probably made money I wouldn't have made because I just didn't follow through. And I have so many projects I tried to do myself that are basically just sitting in a folder because I got burnt out by it. And things that I'm actively working with other people who are passionate. People are like, hey, I have this idea. Can we do this? And it's having that extra hand to make it happen, because then I can always go back to the other things. But if I'm actively having help now and I don't have that load on my shoulders, I can manage.
Yeah. That's true. That's very true, right? And there's a lot of people who are in the positions that the people on this panel are in, where you can go and you can find help. Brendon, you work with some amazing artists,
which is true. Though I was gonna say, I'm kind of in the opposite boat as
you do a lot
That's
yourself, though, right?
For me, I mentioned I did a lot of projects, but I didn't say it out loud. But almost all of them failed, not because of me, but because I had people that were supposed to be a part of it that didn't do what they were supposed to do. Swords Fall was originally a game called Ethereal. So I have so much material because I originally was supposed to write a game for a story for a game. And well, the game never happened. I did the story, you know what I mean? So for me, especially why I can do it full time is because I've been empowered through the Kickstarter to actually be able to do it myself and to be able to hire freelancers to do the stuff where before I had to rely on partners and being like, hey, are you ready to do this terrible, awful thing that nobody wants to do? I'm ready. And they're like, ah.
And
so being able to be like, hey, can I just pay you to do this terrible thing? We know it's terrible, but I'll pay you literally this fair amount to do this terrible, boring thing, works perfectly. So and for me also, because I do a lot of art, sometimes I feel like I'm cheating because artists are doing what they like to do. My art team is getting to draw what they want to draw. The difference is that I can actually give them the amount of money they wanted, which makes all the difference in the world. So I get really great art because I don't negotiate. I pretty much go, hey, I love your art. How much? Right. And they I really don't negotiate. They're like, well, it's no. What would you want to be paid? Here, let me show you this piece of art that I found of yours, and that's how I like it. How much for this? Because I'll pay that. You know what I mean?
The question is, how much do you tip? Are they undercutting themselves, and do you need to tip them?
And for me, that's kind of where I gauge it based on, and I guess this is where it comes down to I have the advantage of having had to manage people before in other jobs. You get a sense that the trick to all of it is that some of the people who are the best will undersell themselves the most. And some of the people who sell themselves the most can't always back it up. So you have to learn to figure out like who is just kind of shy about their ability and who you can kind of pump up, and who like you got to be like, can you really do this thing, or are you just trying to be flashy? So for me, like that's kind of how I use tips. That's why I try to get them to be like, okay, what's your rate? And now that I've had enough artists, I kind of get a sense of like the overall average, you know? And so like I've had it, like that's how my relationship with Tumo started off. Like he really like not undercut, but he wasn't like a known name and I wasn't a known name. So it's kind of like a, hey, here's a fair deal because neither one of us know each other, but this sounds cool. And for me, I was like, yeah, I want to do more. And I know you deserve more money. Let me get this Kickstarter, my friend. And I promise you, I'll take care of you, you know? So that was a conversation that we had. And so some of the stuff I get is because I've told my guys behind the scene, like, hey, like, I'm going to take care of you. Let me get this Kickstarter, like, watch, like, see, you know? So the day the Kickstarter, like, got off and we hit goal, like, because we're in 2 different time zones. So I sent Timo the message and I was like, hey, what did I say? And he was like, oh, you meant it. I was like, I meant it. Like, let's go. Like, if I could do everything by myself, honestly, I probably would, but I can't. I don't draw, and that's okay. But I can try to find the funds to get people who can do that stuff. And so that's kind of how I build my team, right? I bring people to like, I try to infect people with my enthusiasm, you know, and figure out, okay, like what do you need to be in your best space to do what you need to do best? And that's kind of how like I approach everything. And so I think there's like a weird mix of I drive myself and I drive my team and my team drives me because I also want to be that awesome boss, you know? So when they do a good piece of art and I have the budget and I can add another $75, literally, why not? You know, because I kind of know that the way that art works and how much time they spend on it, you're kind of underpaying them even when you think you're overpaying.
Yeah.
You know? So like, I can't do it all the time, and they kind of know that, but I'm like, hey, we got an extra $50. This piece was amazing. Here you go. And it's the little things. If you just keep doing that, you get a bond with your team. And I don't know what the question was, but like at the end of the day, it's really all about just like, I kind of taken it to myself to be like the boss and do everything I can, but also recognize there's stuff I can't do. And that's okay. You can find people who they want to do it and empower them to do it and like pay them the money, you know? And that's kind of the same thing as a partnership. It's just I keep it a little more like business, but without business, you know? But like Swordsfall's my baby, but like I'm not going to undercut you because of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I guess the original question is, what was one thing you wish you had known a year ago, as far as all of this goes, right? And
that all the things I thought businesses were doing wrong, I was right.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, like I ran my Kickstarter how I thought I should do it. I ran my business how I thought you should do it. And so many times when you're that person who's like, I think you should do this, people go, oh yeah, okay, then do it yourself. And I was like, cool, I will. And there's that nervousness because on the outside, I was like, yeah, Swordsfall's gonna be dope. Come to this Kickstarter. And inside, I was like, you know, so being able to go back here and be like, it's okay, man. Like, you actually did the work. You don't see it now, but once you do it, you realize you really did put in the work and keep to it and it'll be okay. So for me, it's just reassurance because that's the hardest part, especially when you're doing things that you haven't really seen before, but you feel should be done, being like a quote unquote trendsetter. You have no idea if you're right or wrong until it's too late to retract it, you know? Once it's out there, it's out there. So having that reassurance to be like, yeah, like you can sleep tonight before the Kickstarter. Like I promise, my friend, like it'll be okay, you know? And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of stuff I want to tell people it's okay. Like the hardest part is doing it.
Yes, exactly. That is one of the hardest things is really getting started and you know, having the confidence in your own work to get started doing it. I think is harder than it seems, and I think it's also why a lot of projects stop halfway through or aren't seen through to completion, because the work itself is work, and and that is a huge thing I think people don't necessarily realize. So let's take a question from Atheros, who wants to know, what advice would you give to someone who's planning on walking the TTRPG worker path. And when I asked Atheros to clarify, they said, someone who's coming in to do some like boots on the ground creative work, designing, writing lore, or making rules, that kind of thing. I know we all are sort of involved in that one way or another, right? So like, what advice, Gabe, why don't we start with you? What advice do you have for somebody who wants to be on that path of like doing the daily grind in the word mines, working with words in tabletop role-playing games?
When you want to get your idea out there, it doesn't necessarily have to be perfect. Sometimes it's enough initially to just be fun.
Mm-hmm.
People will play your thing if they enjoy it and they think it's fun. If there are some grammar mistakes and stuff like that, if you're just trying to get started, people will probably help you. People will give you feedback. People will catch things. But if it's fun, they're going to be excited, and then you're going to be able to share in their excitement.
Yeah, that's a great advice too for building your audience, right? If you're sharing your stuff online, you can kind of build excitement about the thing before maybe it's ready to sell or turn in or whatever it is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Brendon? What advice do you have for people who want to really get in there and work with the words?
Grind, embrace the grind. Like it's funny. It's like a wrestling principle, right? Because of course I did wrestling in high school because they were like, you're a big guy, you should wrestle. And I'm like, all right, whatever. But you learn that like the key to some stuff is the grind. Like there's a fun part and then there's a not fun part. And unfortunately, there's usually more not fun parts than fun parts. And your ability to get through the non-fun part really makes more of a difference than your ability to get through the fun stuff. Like, I love writing lore. I hate editing. All I've been doing with Swordsfall for the last 3 months is editing, and my soul hurts. So, but you got to do it. You know what I mean? So that's how it is.
Yeah, I am the same exact way. It's like, oh yeah, sitting down to write that rough draft of lore, I'm firing away, and then when it comes time to edit, it is rough. Yeah. Leona, you approach words kind of from a different angle. What advice do you have for people who want to work with words, either as you do or who want to work like with you? You know what I mean? They're gonna write things that you're gonna look at.
I think if you're wanting to be a sensitivity reader, know what you can sensitivity read about, find your niche, right? And that typically comes from lived experience. So the advice that you've been giving away for free your whole life is stuff that you should really be charging for. You should be charging for your emotional labor. And if you're wanting to work with the sensitivity reader or cultural consultant, just approach us and ask all of the questions, right? We're here to help. And I'm always happy to answer questions personally. I think knowing, kind of figuring out, like for example, I'm not a game designer at all. I that's not my thing at all. But I know that I can help shape ideas, and that I can help shape things, that so that they're not racist. Quite simply, I can shape things that way. And I know that that's something that I can do. So I was able to kind of figure out what my niche was. So if you're trying to get into something like this, figure out what your niche is. What can you really offer people, and then offer it.
Find out your superpower.
Yeah.
Then make a uniform.
Yeah, that is very true, right? I often see people say, I love to write lore, or I don't like to write lore, but I love to write rules, right? Like all of that kind of stuff. It's important to know about yourself, so that you end up writing the things that you enjoy working on and you are best at working on. Hannah, you are writer, editor, master of development and copy editing. Yeah, that's right. I'm putting it out there. So, what advice do you have for people who want to go into the editing side of things, but you're also a designer too? So what advice do you have for designers?
I have one universal piece of advice that is the first and most important piece of advice I always give, and that is to start small. That's how I did it. That's the only way I got started and put anything out there and got anything done. And most people I know have done something, who have had success, who have built and released creative things in this industry. I've done things similar. Start with a 1-page subclass, piece of lore, essay, set of magic items, 1 page. You might have a fantastic idea for a campaign setting, for a 3-shot adventure, even for a 1-shot adventure. Start small. As small as you can, just do that, go through the whole process, get it done.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. So we have another question from Ogre Banana. Wants to know, mental health for self-employment is super helpful. How do you all balance your workload and know when it's time to stop for the day? I am also interested in the answer to this question. Yeah, who would like to start? Go ahead, Gabe.
There have been literally times when I write something 4 times and I'm like, it's not right. And so literally I get up and walk away. Because if I was going to take a break later, I can always come back to work later instead. But if I'm sitting there and it's not right, if I get up, go have a sandwich, go drink some apple juice, literally sometimes inspiration comes at the weirdest times. So when I stop making myself try to find the right answer, I'll find the right answer. But if I force myself to do it, all I'm going to do is exhaust myself and my work's going to suffer.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. The breaks are good for your work, so it's an important thing. Brandon, you often talk about like when you are going to take a break on Twitter, and then we'll be like, well, I didn't take a break.
Yeah. With that said, I should say, so since I do things full time, I kind of treat it like I'm always on the clock. But that doesn't necessarily mean I'm working every second of the day. If I want to get up and walk away and do something for an hour, okay. You know what I mean? So I don't make myself feel bad when I don't do things in the moment, because I leave myself open to doing things at any time of the day. You know what I mean? So I'll wake up, at like 5 a.m. I might work till like midnight because I want to get something done, or I might do 2 or 3 hours and then goof around with something else. But I typically just try not to make myself feel bad, but I also put myself in a situation where work is always closer than it is than not work. Like right now behind like the Zoom window, I have like literally what I'm going to work on once we're done here. Like, so I leave my tabs of work open and I don't close it. So even if I'm having a day where I'm like, I can't get anything done and I'm feeling weird, 'cause, I get that where I'm like, I can't sit down and I'm just like doing cartwheels in my chair. So instead of closing stuff out, I leave it up and I'm just like, I'll go do something. So when I come back, it's still the first thing I see, and I'm like, oh yeah, we were doing this, and I'm like, are we feeling it yet? And like I negotiate with myself also. Like sometimes you have to do that. You're like, all right, Brandon, do you really want to do this today? And it's like, no, but do you have to? Yes. So what do we do? You're like, okay, what if we watch this show for an hour, then at least we come back and write a paragraph. Is that fair? So it's like you do whatever you have to. For me, like I negotiate with myself. I'm pretty harsh with myself, so it's a good back and forth, but you kind of just figure out what your flow is. And for me, I feel comfortable when I'm always in the work mode, but knowing I'm not like chained to a desk like an office. If I want to do Twitter for a bit, sure. I just keep that in mind that like at the end of the day, you still have stuff you want to get. I have objectives. So rather than like I know like some people are saying like they do like a calendar, or like Gabe does it like on paper. I kind of do like more of like objectives, mainly because like I cut my teeth in like game development. So you get used to the fact that you can't really say do this by Wednesday because something crazy could happen. So instead you just have goal points. You're like, cool. So by the end of the month, we want to be here. And that makes me feel like I have pressure, but not so much pressure the way like I flip out and I don't do anything, so.
I find doing that things that way ends up like, I have that, but also if I just say, okay, I need to, edit this piece sometime in the next 5 weeks, then I'll swap back and forth between, oh God, I don't have enough time, and no, I have plenty of time, I'll be fine. And so setting small goals while I'm working really helps. If I have 100,000 words to edit, which happens, I will kind of count down and be like, okay, I'm gonna get, 100 words closer, 1,000 words closer. I'm just gonna edit another 100 words and then I'll take a break, another 100 words, then I'll take a break. But regarding mental health, James, for my friends, everyone, I have a confession to make. I've made it 45 minutes into this panel. I sleep for I sleep for 9 hours a night, most nights. I need sleep. I cannot survive. I can't operate. I can't be happy or healthy or productive without sleep. It's just not something I can sacrifice.
Sure.
I sleep. I get sleep. If you need that, do that. If you don't need that, go look at the research and think about whether you do need that again. Not sleeping is very bad for you.
Literally will kill you.
Yeah.
Sooner rather than later.
Yeah. So, no, it is. It's that's an important thing. And I think it's also, I think that it's good this question came up because there is a little bit of, especially when you're full-time in an industry that a lot of people want to be full-time in, that many people are self-employed in, there is this idea of like, yeah, you're a hero, right? If you only get 3 hours of sleep a night and you're doing it right. And it's like, no, you're miserable.
It also means you're wasting time, because are you actually being productive? You had to work 21 hours of the day. Did you really actually work 21 hours? You know what I mean? Like,
well, and like Brandon, my partner and I, every day has the potential to be a work day. Most hours of the day have the potential to be work time. I'm not great at this myself, but I'm great at advocating for my friends to take vacations. It's really hard to stop working for a few days at a time, to plan that out and to actually do it. It's really hard. But I think whether, you're in a retail job, whether you're a CEO, actual vacations where you don't work occasionally are important.
Also, I think it's important to make your work zone not feel like a terror zone. Like, even though I technically work all day, I have 2 screens. So as anybody knows on Twitter, I watch shows. So like, I'll write and work or whatever I have to do, but I have a show up, like it keeps me feeling like I'm not chained to a desk. Like, I'm really sad that I don't have any more Murder, She Wrote, because that was like some of the best background work stuff ever, so it keeps me like in a nice elevated mood, and I don't feel like I've been grinding. I'm like, oh wow, it's 10 o'clock already? I should probably think about maybe sleeping eventually, so like you can make things fun, but not like in an Office Space fun where it's like, one dinosaur and a stapler desk, you know what I mean? Like, make your workspace comfortable, make it like a space you enjoy sitting down in, not with stuff that like you want to get distracted with, like putting your PlayStation right next to your like, workstation, but like, like festive, add some color, what I mean? Like, get a cup holder for your drink, get a good drink, it's like, I feel like people forget that like, just because you have to do work for X amount of time doesn't mean you have to suffer the whole time. Like, you can make your work fun, feel fun.
Yeah. And that's one of the points of working in tabletop games would hopefully be that like you want to have fun, right?
It's still work. It's always going to be work. Don't delude yourself into thinking that just because it's fun, you're never going to work a day in your life.
Yeah.
But hell, hobbies are work, man. Like, I think we kind of forget, like, even the stuff we love to do. Like, who doesn't love a board game, but then when it's done, you're like, oh, we got to put this sucker up.
Yes. Leona, you talked already a little bit about sort of how you achieve your work-life balance and keep things healthy for yourself. Do you have like an end point in your day, or what how does that work for you?
I do have an endpoint in my day, and it's when I can either start to feel the mental fatigue, or I'm sitting at the computer and not achieving anything. It's like, okay, it's been 20 minutes on Twitter, Leona. It's been 20 minutes you've been looking at your email and you haven't responded to a single one. It's what, 11 o'clock at night? Go to bed, girl. You know, and it's just knowing yourself. You know, if you are the sort of person where you can push your limits, by all means do it, right? If that works for you and you can do it in a healthy way, do it. That's not me. I need my sleep too. So if I'm looking like it's getting pretty late and I'm not getting anything done and it's not being productive in any way, shape, or form, I just call it a night. It'll keep, it can wait until tomorrow. It doesn't feel like it, but it can wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's
And
a
I think,
marathon too, you know,
Yeah.
so
yeah.
can't sprint the whole time.
Yeah,
Literally cannot.
exactly. Yeah. Well, a big thing too is to rely on your friends, and I think that can be hard right now, especially with the pandemic and everything, right? Like to say like your social connections are important, right? Like especially in tabletop gaming, like we play games with people, you know, and so it's really important to remember like, hey, there's people out there, and you want to hang out with them, and let them also be like, hey, it's a good reason for me to stop is because I don't know, maybe I should call my sibling or call my best friend, whatever it is, right? And hang out with them, spend some time hanging out with your partner if you live with your partner, whatever it is.
Play a home game, you know? After this,
Yeah.
I'm going to play a game with friends, and it's not streamed. It's just what we do for fun.
Yeah, exactly.
I think in a weird way, you have to find like your love language again once you become a creator.
Yes.
Because like how you approach stuff just completely changes, whether you like it or not. It does. So you know you have to figure out what that is now, and I feel like that's a big thing too.
That's huge. Yeah, agreed. And I think that's a great place to start wrapping up. Thank you so much to everybody who watched. Sorry we didn't get to all of your amazing questions. They're really, really good. And let's go around the table. Let people know where they can find you. Leona, let's start with you.
Hi, my name is Leona Maple. You can find me on Twitter at the Leona Maple. You can always hit me up there if you have questions about stuff. If I didn't get to your question that you threw into chat, feel free to hit me up there. I am an intersectionality consultant. I am a sensitivity reader, and I'm happy to help make your work more diverse, inclusive, and awesome.
Yes, excellent. How about you, Brendon? Where can people find you?
You can go to the Swordsfall website to get all the info, swordsfall.com. You can go to shop.swordsfall.com to buy some stuff, which you should because it's awesome. Follow me on Twitter at swordsfall1 if you want to see art and snarky opinions. And I'm also do my thing on Twitch /swordsfall, and I talk about this stuff too. So Tuesday, I talk about Swordsfall, sometimes real stuff. Thursday, I usually talk about real stuff like this. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Hannah, where can people find you?
You can find me on the internet at Wild Rose Mage. I talk about D&D writing, editing, and ways to make our community safe, inclusive, happy, successful. And D&D Community on the D&D Twitch channel, second Friday of the month.
Excellent. And Gabe, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, pretty much anywhere on the social media as Gabe James Games. My DMs are open, and I'm telling y'all, it pays off. What I was going to say before is last week I was able to quit my part-time job because I was making enough doing this.
Yes,
Hey.
yes. Congratulations. That's
Thank
huge.
you.
That's a great place to end it. Thank you so much to Venture Maidens for setting this up. Don't forget to check out the amazing digital gift bag, con swag bag that they've got. Donate to the Trevor Project, which is doing amazing work right now. And thank you all so much for watching. See you later.
Thank you.
Huh?